Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast, Conversations with a Cause with social entrepreneur Safaraz Ali.
Welcome to another Canny Conversation with a Cause, a conversation that we hope will captivate your curiosity cannily. Saf, we've got a really interesting guest with us today, haven't we?
He's an old colleague of yours, and you've been talking about him for years. And thank you for bringing...
The gentleman that's with us today is Vince Essex, and Vince and I go back a very long way. He was in nappies and I was just finishing secondary school when we first met. Vince he's Mr. Aviation, spent his whole life with his head in the clouds. So it couldn't have anybody much better to be with us today to talk about the topic on our agenda, which is resilience. Saf, what does resilience look like to you? What does it mean?
Yeah, again, from a personal... we can all Google and look at the word resilience and look it up in the dictionary. That's quite easy for us to do. But from a personal perspective, I think it's the ability to cope with adversity. Ability to cope with difficult moments, dark moments, dark times, and how do you recover from that? I think that recovery is important. So not to lose sight of the big picture, the wider picture, the vision, where you're going, what the plan is, and not to be too much inward as well, and to be able to see ahead and see through that particular moment, whatever that moment is. And I think from my perspective, it's that self-belief. It's being able to understand that every journey is going to have some ups and downs, and you're going to have some downhill moments, but there's always going to be the uphill moments as well, and be able to really see the wider picture, the bigger picture, and for what it is as well, and not to get too obsessed with the negativity and go through that.
How do you keep smiling, Vince? How do you keep going when the time gets difficult? And of course, having, being in aviation, then, the COVID pandemic has been truly dreadful. We're going to talk in another episode more specifically with Vince about aviation. But more generally, Vince, you must have had some dark nights of the soul. How do you cope?
I think, as Saf said, exactly the same for me. It's trying to remain calm, as I would say, head up in the moment of a disaster or a crisis. And, I started my business just literally post 9/11. We then survived Ash Cloud. We survived financial crisis. We're now gone through a pandemic, which at the start was a month. Yeah, I must still remember saying to my staff, don't worry, I'll see you all in May. Yeah. That was 2020. And I didn't see some of them for 18 months after that. But it was, for me, I think, continue being focused, but personally, I think my passion for aviation has helped my resilience. Knowing that, I'm so strong-headed about it, it was determined to keep me going no matter what. We've all had bad. Saf may agree. I've made some bad decisions in the past, but we've come through them, and then you're faced with having to make decisions which are beyond your control, which are such as COVID, and that's for me been. I think being the main thing is remaining calm, but solely focused that there always is a road out of it. It's just choosing the right road out of it.
Saf, there's a term, isn't there, that says that the knock that doesn't kill you always makes you stronger. Saf and then Vince, is that true?
I think we live in a world which is what they call a VUCA world, which is VUCA, volatile, uncertain. C, what does that stand for? Something I can't remember now. And then ambiguous, complex and ambiguous. So that's the world we live in. We don't have all the information. We sometimes have to make decisions based on the information that we know. There's certain things that we don't know. Certain things, it's like that saying, you can only control what you can control. And the things that you can't control, you have to let them be. And really, be in a position where you can be a little bit more adaptable. You can be a little bit more focused in terms of the things that you need to be focused on, and I think that's the key from my perspective. It's something that we've all had to be better at and get better at, and as you said, if it doesn't, it makes you stronger on the whole, but it's also putting things in perspective and not losing sight of that perspective really.
Of the batterings that you've taken through your life, Vince, ultimately made you a stronger and more effective business person?
Yeah, without a doubt. I was going to say that I think the C word you're looking for was crazy, because that seems to be the crazy world we're living in at the moment.
Yeah.
But yes, I think as you just said, Safi, again, remaining focused. There's been some bad times, and how you deal with that. Everyone is dealt with individually. COVID has been actually, I probably learned more in COVID than I had done the previous 5 years. I mean, I think from even HR wise, I think you think you know everything as a business owner, HR or risk assessments or law in this area. But COVID's been, you can, you get bad times, but you can learn from those bad times and learn a lot in them bad times.
Have you, Vince, I think I'm right in saying that you work essentially for yourself almost from the beginning, haven't you? Whereas Safaraz, you spent a period in the corporate world working for other people before you went into business yourself. Do you think that both of you, and be honest, guys, be honest, have there been times when you've thought, blimey, I wish I had a nice civil service job, or I was a teacher or something like that, decent salary, long holidays, sick pay, holiday pay, guaranteed good pension? You must both at times have thought, I wish that was me.
Yeah, actually quite regular. To be fair, I'm not going to deny that. There are times, every couple of months you think, I'll jack all this in and I'll, get a consultancy job somewhere and be quite nice. But then I weigh up the pleasure of working for myself, even the upsides and the downsides, the passion to keep going and to keep your income going in, generating a profit. And no matter what the life versus work balance, it still outweighs for me that corporate job. As much as the perks of you just say sound nice, I still say that the best freedom I have of driving down the road at 3 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night thinking, well, someone's not saying to me, I want this on my desk before 4 o'clock tomorrow or else, or the pressure, it's a different kind of pressure. It's a lot of pressure working for yourself, but it's a kind of, not a free pressure, but there's, you're setting your own targets and they're not being set for you. And I think that's been a big decider for me working for myself, is having that freedom, but yet, my hard work is rewarding for me and my family and those that work for me, not a corporate. So that's just my personal take on it, of course.
Yeah, and most of that, I actually agree with Vince. It is about choice, and we make that choice in terms of what we want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean less work. A lot of the time it means more work and harder work and tougher. We don't have that cushion that sometimes we get. And often, we always look at the grass is greener on the other side. When I was in that sort of corporate environment, my think was, I want to move away from that. Yeah, and yes, there was perks there. We had free lunch. We had all the benefits. Pension, final salary, pension scheme. All of those sort of cushion was there. All those benefits were there. But my yearning was, what is my sort of passion? What is the thing that really keeps me going? And you get into a position where you want that choice, you want that freedom, you want that element of pushing yourself continuously. And for me, moving away from that sort of corporate world to make a bigger impact, to, for that word is important. I think that bigger impact, that contribution was my thing. And this is the reason I went into sort of social entrepreneurship. I wanted to make that bigger difference, make a bigger difference in terms of what I was doing. And yes, I was a contributor in a large organization, but I felt that I could do more. And for me, is that element of what can I do more? And is this it? And that was my sort of calling, and that was my yearning, really.
It's a great entrepreneurial skill to have that mindset that you feel if you're in a big corporate on a good package, doing a good job, even at that level, you felt that you could do more on your own. I mean, that's just, a great thing to hear. Now, conversely, I'd probably struggle in a big corporate now, having worked on my own for myself, being in charge of my own destiny for 20 years. I think if I walked into a big corporate tomorrow, I probably would struggle.
You'd probably be unemployable.
You're probably right, actually.
Probably be unemployable, because that's what we are. We need that element where, yes, fine, we can work with rules, we can work with that, but we also need to set our own vision. And I think that vision is important. Yes, it's not always about money. It's not always about more money or more pay or whatever. Or it's it's about really the direction of travel that you want to go to, and that's probably the apt word here: the direction of travel, where you want to set yourself, and where you want to go, and you want to be controlling your own destiny.
That's right,
I think this is where sometimes people leave their work because they feel that I don't have that control. I'm no longer the master or the mistress of my own sort of destiny. And I think we want that sort of, we want to believe our own vision and set and to work towards that.
That's right. Any level across a corporate, you're not in control. Even as the CEO of a large corporate or entry level, you're never in control of what you just said, where it's going. I don't think even nowadays you could probably name a CEO that's 100% in control of where that business is going.
Yeah, I mean, just takes that thought forward, Vince, if we could. One of the reasons people work for themselves and set up in business is because they want to be their own boss. Well, actually, they're not their own boss, are they? I mean, you the business that you run, you work for a number of different airlines, so you're not really your own boss. So you're somebody else's boss, but in a slightly different structure than perhaps a traditional structure. And the same with you, Saf. You talk about the ability to control, but you can only control up to a point. You are dependent upon other people. You are dependent upon, people that want to contract on your services. So, Vincent and Saf first, if you would, isn't that idea of being your own boss a little bit of a delusion?
I think we all have customers that we have to look at. We all have rules and regulations, and we also have these things that we work towards, and these frameworks that we look at. And it's not about necessarily the fact that we're power freaks or power hungry here, or the fact that we want it all our way. But I think it's ultimately where you have an element of choice. You want to be in a position where you can contribute, and I think even if you talk about things like branding and marketing and advertisements in an environment of a completely corporate environment, you wouldn't have any control over how that brand is positioned or how the advertisement is, or the fact that if you wanted to try certain things, you would have to put a business case together and so forth. We try. This is where the entrepreneurial mindset comes in, and sometimes if you can get that balance right, which is what we're trying to do at our organization, is to have an element where people are in a not necessarily corporate environment, but in a company environment, in a business, but they've got an entrepreneurial mindset. There's an entrepreneurship that they can get in, and this is what we call intrapreneurship. You're in a business environment, but you've got some element of choice. You can try different things. You can try and fail, and you can test and fail. You can and that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes we don't have the benefit of that in certain organizations.
Yeah, it's similar to me. I think as I contract as a consultant for airlines, if I was to roll out an entrepreneurial idea, having been an employee of that airline, I don't think it would have worked. But being a consultant and bringing my expertise in-house, it gives you more flexibility to roll something out and bring new ideas into a business, which I know people that work for corporates that say to me, having a drink in the pub, I've got this idea, but it fell flat on deaf ears. I don't know why it has. And, I just feel, again, bringing your expertise externally in as a consultant. And that's how our contractors work. I've changed things within businesses that I'm 99.9% convinced it couldn't have been changed if I was on their books at any level inside that business.
When you left school, Vince, did you decide that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or did you kind of fall into it by accident? So I'm just interested in the story because, Saf's story is of someone who, worked, for want of a better word, in a conventional way, and then went into entrepreneurship. What motivated you to do that, to take that route, or was it, like so many things in all of our lives, a bit of an accident?
It was a combination of things. I think they always had an underlying idea when I was kind of 18 that it would be nice at some time in my life to work for myself. I did a couple of different roles in aviation when I was 18. right through actually till I was 25 when I started my own business. I got a bit of expertise. Then an opportunity came along at the right time, and then was the right time to start on my own. It was a massive struggle, like most people when they start a business for the first few years, and then it rolled from them. Things fall into place, a bit of luck. You rode hard times, but yeah, I think there was an underlying to do that, to work for myself. I always felt that the bit of freedom and the ability to be in control of my own destiny was probably key for my life, and it is for the next 20 years of my 30 years, how long I work for. I don't think I'll ever retire, but there'll always be something to do in a business somewhere. So yeah.
We're doing this recording in the early spring of 2022, and of course, one of the benefits of podcasts is they can be picked up anytime. They're sort of out there almost forever. So that just provides a bit of context, because I want to move on to talk about specifically the impact of the COVID pandemic on the world and in the UK. And aviation must have been hit by that perhaps more than most other sectors. Some people, of course, had a good COVID, didn't they? It wasn't all bad, if you've got a nice secure job, you worked from home, you got your pay, you didn't have to worry about commuting charges and all the inconvenience. So, and yet for others, it was incredibly difficult. You agree with that, don't you, Saf?
Yeah, I mean, we have discussed this a number of times, and we've come to the same conclusion. The fact that it's people have been worlds apart to a certain level, and there's individuals who have the luxury of space in their home, who've got a garden, who've absolutely loved it, and less travel, and they've got the skill sets. They can work from home and have been able to work from home, and they've had that freedom. On the other side, we've multi-generational families where they haven't got the space. You've got people who are they've got a number of people in their home. They haven't got the space of a quiet space that they can have, and definitely they've had difficult times in terms of mentally. They've had to deal with pressure from a number of family members living all together, where they've never really had that. We've had people who going out at different times where they're all stuck together. They're all there doing their own things. Some of them are doing their schoolwork, some are doing their college work, some of them are at home, that like they have been, and others are working, and they've all had to do that and cope with where it's been unusual for them. And at the same time, I've seen in our care business, we've had to deal with and understand the fact that those carers have got family as well. They're also parents. They're also potentially personal carers as well as professional carers, and all of those things come into equation. And we've also had to, some cases, convince and talk to their family members the fact that they need to go out in the front line and care. Because their services are needed and their contribution is needed to keep people alive and keep people going, and so there's different aspects of it, and I've struggled in some aspects of it, helping my younger child with his homework, and that's probably been tough for me, as well as trying to run the business, as well as giving people the vision and the clarity, and people are looking for the answers, and we don't necessarily have all the answers, and we're getting the information at the same time as them, and trying to make sense of it, and trying to give people the direction of travel, and give them the vision that they sometimes need,
How easy, Vince, was it for you to work from home, and how did you cope with distractions like family and all the rest of it?
The first few months was great because we had no choice but to close up. To close up, it was a 7-figure turnover every year that's been like that for 20 years. The tap was running, and literally, when I say literally overnight, someone just turned off the tap. I did not churn out an invoice for the first 3 months. Yeah. I was at home in the pool with the kids. That's not swimming, it's paddling pool, by the way. Yeah. And it was great. I remember saying to my staff, look, it's just going to be 1 month. Furloughs kicked in. I'll top up the other 20% and I'll see you all in May. This was 2020. I didn't see some of them for 18 months after that. Even my accountant said to me, "You promised them all top up the pay. So you carry on doing this, this could go on for 2 years. You'll be bust, And I was like, again, I'll be totally honest, I had to go back cap in hand and say, look, we're struggling. We're going to struggle as a business going forward to top up the 20%. Totally different. Actually, there was no homework set in the first lockdown. Literally every day, we were just a family at home in the garden. Of course, with my having to shield as well, I couldn't go out. So if there was anything to be done, it was just literally a laptop, an hour a day or 2 hours a day, which I managed to do when the kids was in bed. That's how little work it dried up overnight for me.
That brings me on to another issue that I wanted to talk about. I remember one conversation that we had, Vince, on the telephone, which I'm not going to forget because it made me weep. You may recall it or you may not, but I called you to see how you were getting on, and you were driving up from Cornwall, I think it was, and it was in the first lockdown, and I said, "What are you doing, Vince?" And you said, "I'm going to a meeting." And I thought, what are you going to? You're a transplant patient. You are very vulnerable. You're taking a risk, and you said to me, "Adrian, if the government's going to stop me working, but they're not paying my mortgage." So, Saf and Vince, for all the hullabaloo and all the rest of it, and all the Rishi magic stuff, the level of support that particularly the very vulnerable businesses had was a drop in the ocean, wasn't it, Saf, from the government?
I think, again, there's a couple of sides to that. I mean, there's some businesses have done really well out of it, and there's pockets of businesses who've fallen through and got nothing. So smaller businesses, they were given a grant for their sort of premises if they were registered and they were paying rates. In some cases, if they were in flexible premises and they never had, or they don't have a council tax in their own name, they didn't get anything. So they got the bigger packages in terms of the furlough scheme, the self-employment scheme, but a lot of it depending on various rules, and you can easily get caught out, and many businesses got caught out. The bounce back loans were coming in for that benefit of, if you did get caught out, then you've got an element of a loan, but again, that had a criteria as well. And what we find was that there's many individuals, many self-employed individuals, many businesses that the packages weren't necessarily right for them. Most people, I would say, were covered, but it's also that so maybe 20% or so forth that really, unfortunately, weren't covered, and because you've got that disparity there, they're hit harder, and it affects them more, and again, the catch-all unfortunately didn't catch all, and some of the people that were left out were hit harder. It was a double whammy effect for them.
I mean, so over to you. I mean, I can imagine the conversation you had with your wife in the family was, what the heck are you going out for, Dad? You're at risk. I've got to, I've got to make a living. I mean, how do you feel about the level of support that's been provided, and in particular for people that have got, challenges like perhaps being vulnerable because of health or something like that? It was totally inadequate, wasn't it?
It totally was. For me, it's a bit of a double whammy. You're a business owner who was shielding. So probably not, in terms of percentage, not many business owners of limited companies, of SMEs that were shielding. So on one hand, you couldn't really work, especially with business involved going out. But the philosophy is you make a profit. When you make a profit, you take that out. You make £1,000 a month, you take it out. You make £5,000 a month, you take it out. But when someone turns the tap off, that's not through your doing, through a third party, you can't even control of, there was no profit to take out then. Of course, you're not classed as self-employed. You're a limited company director. You built up a business for 20 years. The income stops. Where'd you go? There's another philosophy that I've personally taken on was I've always built up some retained profit in my business, which had seen me through COVID. If I'd not took that decision way back in the early days to always keep some retained profit in the business as a float, I probably wouldn't be here today. And talking about it, I've always built my business up to build it back down, and for me, that's been key. That as we stage things up or turn things on, I know that I can turn them things up again because I'm in a volatile industry, because we've got Ashlab, because we're volatile to fuel pricing, financial markets, COVID. That's just, again, my own way of working, and it paid off in the end. We was able to switch certain things off and survive. But it was an awful time. I think what the main thing for me is how long it stretched out in the end. I still stand by that first month. It was only going to be a month. And I still look back as a laughing moment to think that 2 years later, we're now just getting back, hopefully, on our feet and seeing some high percentage return in aviation.
How do you feel, Saf, when you hear those kind of stories? What did it make you feel? I mean, it really brings home to me, doesn't it, just how unequal, the COVID business was. And what did it make you feel?
I think we've reflected on it a number of times, and I think the more you reflect on it, you come back to the same conclusion, the fact that at that time, we were definitely in uncharted territory. We didn't know, and we underestimated or overestimated, depending on what it is, and we had nothing to sort of benchmark this from. There was no experience could help. There was no experience there. So you had to really work it from the information that you had, and for most of us, we didn't have the information, and we had to rely on government sources, and you needed a strong, reliable, trustworthy government that would give you the information that they needed. And some of the things that are coming out now in terms of how government were behaving is going to hurt, because that disparity was there. So they were saying certain things. Again, it's a do as I say, but not necessarily as I act, and that hurts now. But we've all potentially, I think we've lost people that we know, whether it's directly loved ones or people that, neighbours or friends of friends or, relatives of friends. And we've all been impacted. I've had occasions where, we weren't able to grieve properly with family members, and we weren't able to do the things that we do and take for granted. And, individuals, family members that weren't able to see each other, people, care homes, if you look at how they were affected, there's so many aspects of it, and I think we can dwell on this, but it makes you sad. It definitely makes you sad, but at the same time, we can't lose hope, and we need to move on and look ahead, because that's what we as people we need to have hope, and we need to remain hopeful. Otherwise, just thinking about the past, will affect us more, and it's our ability to really recover now and move on. And part of that has to be an element where we as individuals need to start thinking about ahead now and learn from the past in terms of whatever we can learn, but not all of that is adaptable, and not all of that is going to be relevant for us. But let's go.
That's a very good point. I mean, resilience for me was summed up in a photograph on a social media site of Vince unloading bags from a plane, and he said, he's built up a big business, and circumstances mean that he's driving the vans and he's doing all the other things, and that for me summed up what resilience is. We're running a bit short of time now, but running a business can be a very lonely place, and make people feel very, very isolated. So both of you, perhaps you, Vince, first. Have you got people that you can turn to when the clouds are gathering and talk to and help you come through, or is it something you have to deal with largely alone?
The latter. Probably 99% again on my own. that there's been no. Luckily, I've got a wife that's just qualified as a counsellor, so mental health wise, there's always assistance there. But in terms of business, I just feel the people to turn to, but it always seems to be, well, if you want to pay £250 joining fee or this annual membership fee, we can give you this advice, or would you like to buy this first? We can help you here. All this grants available, but you need to do this first. In terms of just picking up the phone for advice to an issue, no. But then, as I said, that's what makes you stronger. Is you've got to actually. It becomes a challenge to wade through that issue yourself. Then you actually think you become self-determined to go. Well, actually, do I need outside help? I'll get through this myself. As much as I say that it'd be nice to pick up the phone to somebody and get some free advice. So how would you deal with this? And this is where I think you'll probably agree. There's other business people you speak to, other colleagues got their own businesses, and you bounce off each other. That to me again is the best way forward in a crisis, really.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think we can, for example, I've got friends that I can talk to, but they can't relate to necessarily the issue that I'm dealing, because they look at it from a different perspective, and we generalize, we'll get over it and so forth. That doesn't necessarily help. So, the best source of information or best source there is people who can actually relate to this, who are dealing with this at the same time. And so from my perspective, it's often competitors, who become sort of comrades and colleagues and help people who are in a very different similar situation to yourself, and potentially similar industry to yourself as well. In some cases, yes, when you're talking about generics in terms of the financial thing, or you're talking about people who are who you could talk to on a general basis. But if it's industry matters, it's industry peers, who sometimes are competitors or part of your sort of supply chain, or, who are working with you, who can talk your language, who understand exactly what you're going through, who you don't have to explain everything to. Sometimes, our partners and wives and so forth, there's going to be that gap. They don't have necessarily the knowledge, and they could talk to you generally. They can say, come on, we'll get over it, but it doesn't really land with you. And we need to have those people that you really understand exactly what you're going through, understand your jargon, understand your language, understand what what you're feeling, and you could feel that you can actually talk to them without having to actually explain every single nook and cranny. And I think that's where that relatability comes in, and it only sometimes comes in from who true peers from your industry. Even yourself, Adrian, I regard you as a friend, but you're not going to understand every single aspect of my business. And you're not going to be able to relate. So even though you mean well and say, I can help, and there's many occasions we say, I'm here for you. I can talk to me. Sometimes I can't, because you're not understanding fully our industry. And likewise, I wouldn't understand your industry, but I could sympathize, I can empathize, I'll support you, but I'm not going to be able to relate to every single aspect of it.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes I think just being a listening board can help.
Yes, of course.
Finally, and not quite a yes or no answer from both of you, but we are running out of time. If both of you had your time again, if you could go back to the 18-year-old Vince and the 18-year-old Saf, do you think you'd follow the same path that you have?
I'm swinging more to yes. I probably would have done, yeah. Whether I've been in it so long, it's hard to see myself doing something else. But still, from that young age, my passion was aviation. Unfortunately, I was lucky enough to live down the road from the airport, and that's after school where I'd end up going on my bike every day. And I think from that then sent me into the industry. It's strange. I think I would actually, I would be in aviation doing something. But I think, put it that way, what else in aviation, I'm not quite sure. But certainly in the industry.
Saf, would you?
I think we're at the position of the journey that we've had is what has made us. So if we try and change any of that, we'll be too worried in terms of what would change us, because it's a combination of all of those, the combination of the knocks, the failures, the combination of those mistakes, the combination of the good times that has actually made us. And, it's easy for us to say, I want to take this out, and just have all the good, or, you can extrapolate on some of that and take out maybe 10 years of the bad stuff or the wilderness. But, then you're changing the makeup of who we are. And the makeup of who we are is some of the negatives, unfortunately, some of the downsides, the marriage breakdowns, the difficulties that we've had, the parents that we've lost. All of that is what has made us who we are, and we've got to be grateful and thankful to the fact that we are where we are, and hopefully again looking forward now in terms of rather than reminiscing too much of the back, but again be have that gratitude of the experience
we're
we've
going to
had.
finish our kind of conversation, but briefly, Steph. I've been inspired by Vince. I've been inspired by him for a lot of years. But I hope our listeners that have heard his story will get something from it in the terms of, come through tough times, but I'm still standing, as the lyric goes. What do you say?
I mean, I've waited a long time to meet Vince, and you've been talking about him for many years. And as you rightly said, he's a very humble guy, very down to earth, and a person that actually inspires you without actually having to to make a big song and dance about it. Just being him, being Vince. So really appreciate, Vince, the opportunity for you to come and share your journey and your thoughts with us.
No, thank you. It's been good.
So, gentlemen, we curtail our canny conversation with a cause. We hope that you've enjoyed listening. If you have, then like us, subscribe, and also let us know what you think. And do stay safe until the next time. Bye-bye.